Hello and welcome to our Substance live stream. My name is Wes and I will be your host. Today we have with us the Painter development team who worked on our latest UV tiles release. We have Alexandre, who is a senior software engineer, Christophe, who is a senior software development engineer, and Valeria, who is a product manager. And I just have to say, these are some of the coolest people in the world. It is such an honor to hang out with you all. I love you guys. And that is not all. We also have with us Damien as our special guest. Damien is a modeler and concept artist at Framestore. So for our show today, we are going to take an in-depth look at the UV tiles workflow. The Painter team will discuss how they implemented the UV tiles, and then Damien, who worked on the dragon artwork for our release, will share his collaboration with the Painter team and showcase his workflows on the project. So everyone, it's awesome to have you here on the show today. Yep. Can you guys hear me okay?
Hello, guys.
Hello? Yeah.
Hey.
All right, great. Yeah, sorry, little delay there. No problem. Hey, so yeah, it's awesome to have all you guys here on the show today. So yeah, we have a lot to jump into. So before we get started, I just want to say that we have Maureen and Vincent in the chat. So if you have any questions, just throw them up in the chat window. We're going to collect things and do a bit of a little Q&A session at the end. So with that said, why don't we just jump in and get started? So Valeria, you can go ahead and start sharing your screen and then just take it away when you're ready.
Great. So you should be able to see my screen now. Thank you for the introduction, Wes. We love you too. Always a pleasure to hear your voice, whether it be in Academy or on live streams. So I'm just gonna jump right in and comment on my little intellectual quote here. The two most powerful warriors are patience and time. And I think that greatly applies to the weight that has been UV tiles. I think a lot of users have been relieved because they've been asking about it for a very, very long time. And years, decades, or even centuries, I'd say. So we've been asked and coerced and begged, but well, why do you ask it's taken so long? Well, short answer, it's complicated. I mean, not much to say there, but if you want the long answer, of course, as very well a lot of you might know, Substance Painter essentially was not made with UV tiles in mind. It was obviously made with a less large kind of need, so to say. It's originally a software that is game industry oriented, and game industry, as you may as well know, has much more modest needs in terms of geometry and texture set size and just texture sets in general and quality, because obviously it all has to run real time on different machines, et cetera, et cetera. So this is why we had to kind of rework a lot of things from ground up, keeping in mind that everything has to be really upscaled. And another reason is that we also had to keep up with other releases which weren't UV tile related at all, and they're about 3 per year, I'd say. And so every time, 3 times per year, we had to implement other new features that were interesting enough for the non-VFX market, so to say. And all with a relatively modest number of people on the team. And also, when reworking things for UV tiles, some parts of the software would, well, just pretty much break, and we would have to fix it for the next release every time. Maybe Alex can say a bit more about that, since he's the one behind the curtains of it all.
Yeah, thanks, Valeria. So yeah, from the development perspective, what was really a real challenge for us was to revamp a lot of part of the software to be able to display really big assets inside Substance Painter, to be able to work with really big meshes with a lot of textures. And at the same time, like you said, keep adding new features to the software, because we couldn't stop the development of Substance Painter and only release when the UV tiles workflow was ready. So yeah, for us, that was a big challenge, to be able to gradually improve the software to make it more able to work with bigger assets, and at the same time keep the software really stable and allow other members of the team to add new features. So yeah, that was a big challenge.
So one of the first steps that we had to do, and something that you might remember if you've been a Substance Painter user for a little while now, was adapt the SVT or sparse virtual textures. In a few words, what it what it allowed us to do is to manage a large amount of texture sets. If you want to know a bit more, there's a wonderful documentation page, and you should remember as well, I'm going to plug in documentation here. We have a lot of wonderful doc pages, and shout out to Fabrice Piquet, who is responsible for those. So if you're ever in need of reading, take a look. So back to the sparse virtual texture, perhaps Christophe can give us a bit more of an overview so you can understand a bit more of the technical details behind it.
Hello, yes, sparse virtual textures, it's a term, it's a concept that comes from the game industry, and many open world games use sparse virtual textures. The main idea is to display scenes that use texture that cannot fit into the memory of your GPU, the VRAM. And yeah, it's quite trivial. It can be you can think that it's quite trivial, but in your case, the main problem, it was to not only display the textures, this large amount of textures, but also updating them in real time without breaking the existing custom shaders made by users. And yeah, it's a bit challenging. It was a very logical first step for the UV tile workflow, because it allows the user to use lots of texture sets. And texture set was used as a workaround for the UV tile workflow before the release of this summer.
So yes, starting with 2018.3 specifically, that's when we introduced Sparse. We started step by step rehauling kind of all parts of Painter. And when I say all parts, it's really everything. As I told you before, since Painter wasn't essentially made for such huge things as UV tiles, we really had to upscale everything. Viewport rendering, loading mesh, the paint engine itself, baking, export, everything had to be kind of larger than life in this case to accommodate UV tiles. So it could support much larger assets, also more geometry, much more geometry. I think those of you who are familiar with animation and VFX, their count is through the roof. They don't need to run it real time. Just very large textures as well. And as you can imagine, if you multiply all that by the number of channels that is needed, that makes up for a very large amount of maps. Like, I mean, the default channels, there's like 5 or 6, but then you can add, I think, up to 20 something, I think, in Painter. So yeah, it becomes all quite hefty and quite impressive, and it all has to be managed quite quickly, because otherwise it would just be impossible to work with. So not only did we have to upscale everything, but we also had to optimize it. Because if you take the older versions of Painter and you have 100 UV tiles, you would probably notice a certain lag or a little bit, well, if your computer is on the better end, maybe not, but like a normal regular user, there would probably be a slight decrease in performance. Whereas right now, if you take 100 UV tiles or texture sets, you will see that it's much more fluid and it's basically possible to work it with properly instead of just lagging completely. So apart from that, as I've already mentioned, so a lot of optimizations were made on the UV tile side, but those optimizations didn't only apply to UV tile projects, but also applied to any kind of regular projects. So if you're working without UV tiles, you might have also noticed a much faster loading time. So just from the moment you add a mesh, or you load an old project, for example, the calculation becomes much faster because we've optimized things like loading of thumbnails in the layer stack. Right now it's gradual, so you'll just see as well like a loading icon as well that will let you know that nothing is wrong, it's just still loading. And the viewport display itself, if before we wouldn't load the mesh entirely, would wait for all the textures and all the channels to load, and only then you will have access to the project and to actually make actions on the project. As of now, you can start turning around and painting or adding layers, etc., even though your mesh maps are still loading. And you'll see a bit of flickering in the viewport. That's normal. It's not a bug. It is a feature. Also, one of the major differences that even I was impressed with was the lighter project size. And for those of you who did pay attention, you will notice that it can be up to even 60%. So that's pretty significant. And the biggest optimization here was how we store and how we calculate baked maps. To be more precise, if before we stored all baked maps as color maps, and there was quite big dilation around the islands, right now we reduced that and it's stored differently. So that really cut the cost of size for the project. We've also worked on smoother painting. Mainly it was done because as you all well know, for paint across UV tiles, which is quite a feat, well, it was generally done to optimize painting for any kind of project. And another big thing was faster export, because as you can imagine, for those people who work for a lot of UV tiles, like hundreds of UV tiles, they don't have 20-40 minutes to wait if they're exporting in 4K or even 8K. So here we've optimized that quite a bit. So another more sort of surface, or not really, not always, but another more interesting rework that we've done was in terms of user interface and user experience. Notably, with one of the earlier releases, we've changed entirely the export window. We did it, of course, in anticipation of UV tiles, but this export has also permitted users to have more options, that they don't necessarily need to have UV tiles for that, but they have more options to create their own custom presets, or even just choose what to export and how to export and things like that. So just to recap, I think you should always keep in mind that even though this was a big UV tile release, it was still quite a few things that we did to make other users' life easier, the ones who are not necessarily UV tile oriented. And additionally, not only that, but what we try to do is take on the workflow that UV tiles allow and kind of try to adapt some features of that workflow that would be useful for the game crowd or any other crowd, and kind of migrated into the non-UV tile side as well. A very minor example for that would be the thumbnail icons. Some of you might have noticed, but right now, even for regular non-UV tile projects, you can make your icons, well, you can make your thumbnails into icons, which means they're not recalculated every time you open your project or you make some kind of action on your layer, which makes the whole process a bit lighter, generally speaking, since our thumbnails by default are always live. Here, if your project is really big, you can just turn that off. And we have other more complex features like that that we would like to adapt into the non-UV tile workflow, but essentially that come from the UV tile workflow. As for the future, I think we have our work cut out for us, at least for the immediate one. One of the bigger things that we're working on currently, I think Christoph is probably the hero of it all here, performances and bottlenecks. So since everything had to be rehauled and really redimensioned to accept bigger and bigger projects, bigger and bigger meshes, and everything was kind of iterated and worked on area by area, like export, baking, etc. We need to make sure that none of these processes would block, because at some point we could just get one process that blocks and it will basically make the entire software explode, probably crash your computer and disinstall Painter as well. You know, that happens to everyone. But yeah, so apart from that, what we would like a lot as well is user feedback. We're waiting for that and we're asking for that because not only does it help us improve, but also I think it kind of enables us to go forward and better ourselves because we do really, what we do have right now is the first version. It is a version that is stable. It is production ready, if you will, but it is a version that we can still iterate upon for a while, I'd say. We're still adapting the UI and UX for UV tiles. We're still revamping certain features that could work better in both cases. Like for those of you who are more technical, we've introduced the Python API. So right now you can do Python scripting as well. So that's something that still needs to evolve. That's something that's still not in its final stage, so to say. So yes, we're very happy to take your feedback and your ideas and see what we can do with that. And of course, there are feature requests that are coming in from users, not just points that we can improve, but actually new things that we can introduce. And for the moment, the bigger ones are deformation, projection deformation. So kind of like what Marie does, you paint something and then you can deform it at will, and high geometry, both of which you might be happy to know are taken into consideration. And we would like to see how that will evolve within the Painter ecosystems, because we don't want to just take that and be content with that, but we want to really make it work in all sorts of cases and in all sorts of projects. So yes, once again, do not hesitate to reach out, share feedback, share ideas. You can do that through user voice. You can do that through forums, Discord, various social media, homing pigeons, if you will, whatever it is that floats your boat. So thank you. And thanks for listening and having me on.
Thank you so much, Valeria. That's really great. Yeah, so get some pigeons ready so we can send you guys some stuff heading all the way to France. That's awesome. So thank you, Valeria. Very good presentation there. And it was cool to see that insight. So what we're going to do next is transition over to Damien. I guess really quick before I do that, I just want to take a quick shout over to Alex and Christophe to see if you guys had anything you wanted to add or anything you want to touch on.
It was perfect.
It was, yeah, it was perfect.
Nothing
Yeah,
on my side.
I just want to mention something. When Valeria talked about what was complex during the development of the UV tiles workflow, something that we put a lot of effort on was bring a new UI and the UV tile workflow inside Substance Painter without creating like a new mode inside Substance Painter. We wanted to the user who were already familiar with Substance Painter to be able to work like they were working before with a UV tile project. And from a UI UX point of view, that was quite a challenge. And I think we did a pretty great job because right now, working with a UV tile or non-UV tile project, it's just a matter of selecting the option when you create your project. And then you have the same Substance Painter with almost the same functionalities, whereas you are working with UV tiles on a non-UV tile project.
Even on
Awesome.
even on beginner point of view, you can start Painter and start painting on your mesh with or without UV tiles. It works in the same way, and that was the goal.
Awesome, guys. Thank you so much for that. So Damien, I see you already started sharing your screen. So yeah, man, just take it away when you're ready.
All right, thanks so much, guys, for having me. And I want to say a big thanks for the team in general and what we did for these last weeks working together. It was not the first collaboration with Substance. I already created some artworks. We used my models for some stuff, but this one was the biggest one, and I'm pretty happy. I want to say a big thanks for the people watching, of course, my friends who tried to disturb me on the chat since the beginning, and also a big thanks to Benjamin Marichal. I worked a lot with him, and I was super happy to create this baby dragon because I was free to do absolutely what I want, create a design I like, etc. To show you some features also, and I'm really happy about that. But also it was for these multi-UDIM things that I was waiting for so long myself, and it's a real thing. Like every morning for the coffee, even at MPC Frame Store, we were talking with friends about this feature, and honestly, it's a really big move. To be honest, I'm really happy with that. I like the fluidity. I'm gonna show you actually a few things about that, but I also gonna show you some tip and tricks, because I tried to do something for everyone. So this is the dragon I created. So when Substance contact me to create a bit the mascot of this software, and I tried to do something like cute. I wanted to go for a cute thing. I quickly thought about a baby dragon, but I didn't want him too young and too round. I wanted to put some anatomy also, and to add a bit of technical aspects also. So at the same time cute, and at the same time trying to do something technical with this kind of difficult scales that you can see. And this was the second picture I decided to do, because it's really different. So a bit the opposite, with a lot of contrast and these different colors, and the light coming from behind. I'm gonna do a really quick introduction. So this is my personal work, like most of you know, few ones. I think I put few personal work, because I really do a lot, sometime one a week, sometime one every 2 weeks. So this kind of creepy creature, I really like doing personal work, because it's here that I can really work my workflow, I can work on my tools, and I think yeah, I advise to everyone to push for the personal work, because it's here that you're gonna really show what you want to do, and you're going to try stuff that after maybe you're going to bring to the studio. So yeah, I love all these creepy things, dinosaur, dragon, birds. You can find all my work anywhere on Instagram here, and on our station just here. And if you want to contact me, try to contact me on my email, because I can't answer on this one. I have a lot, and I'm sorry for that. And by the way, I want to say thanks also to the team, because today I can do this little presentation. And since long time, people ask me to do tutorials, etc. So this evening I will not do a tutorial, because it's going to take like 3 hours, and I will not go to every process, but I really try to find some tips and tricks that I hope you're going to like, maybe that you don't know. And that's it. And here it's more the professional part. So I think you know few ones. So I worked on those little guys for the Lion King. I sculpted and modeled Rafiki, Scar, and Simba for the recent things. The most recent one maybe is this troll from Disney Plus that you can watch lately, like a few weeks ago. Ghost in the Shell. I worked a lot on Alien and Godzilla 2, but a lot more. And I was in MPC for a long time. I am in London since 5 years, and now I am in Framestore. And what changed for me is that I was modeler. I'm still modeler actually, but now I'm doing a bit more. I am modeler, but also concept artist. And at Framestore, I am more visual development. So it's great, because I'm doing actually a bit more what I'm doing on my personal work. So modeling, texturing, look dev. I also put the creature in a pose, and I create the look and the design of this creature, and we can discuss about that. So it's a concept part, but with realistic render still. So it's really something where I can push the quality, and at the same time I can have the creative part. So I really enjoy it. I'm gonna start directly with the baby dragon. So I'm going to talk about the multi-UDIMs, but you will see that at the same time, this tool is great, because it's a big step, and I was waiting that for so long. And I was waiting that also because I come from VFX. So in VFX, we are using UDIMs absolutely every time. I was already using Substance since a long time, but this thing is it's a big game changer. So you can see here the baby dragon for the first time in bind pose, how we call. So as you can see, I did this dragon symmetrical, of course. And after I'm gonna update the pose. I'm gonna do whatever I want in Maya or 3ds Max. It's Maya for me. But in Substance, I wanted to talk about the symmetry, because I did something pretty cool here, and I don't think lots of people are using it. Is that I use the symmetry, but in another way. So what everybody knows is that if I create a new layer here, I can use the symmetry here, and I can select my brush, and I can draw on my dragon. You will see that the stroke will follow on the other side. So this is not a surprise. It's a great tool, by the way, because not every software are doing it. But I did something quite different, and I will show you. After, I'm going to come back on every layer to show you a bit the process, but I'm going to start directly with the tips and tricks. So I just put a background here, and as you can see, when I'm going to draw the color, so I'm going to press Alt to select only the color, and I'm going to take this beautiful yellow, and I'm going to draw on my dragon. So the first thing, of course, we're going to talk about is that indeed I am drawing on every UDIMs. So this is super cool and super quick. But if you see that I uncheck here, I can draw again with symmetry. So this is something that I use. And I did a really beautiful drawing for you. So this is the thing I do. So at the beginning, for every model I do since years, of course, I use symmetry for my UVs. So you're going to have the UVs. I'm going to show you here. You're going to have UVs here. And what I do is that I take the 1011, 1012, usually they are here, and they are here in Maya and ZBrush, for example. And I'm going to take those guys, and I'm going to collapse my my UVs here. So to be clear, it's not something that I advise in ZBrush, because you're going to have some artifact and you're going to bake the displacement with two things on top of each other. But you can in Substance, and you're going to have this nice workflow where you can just paint on one UDIM and you're going to paint on two at the same time. So I'm going to show you properly the multi-UDIM thing. I'm going to create a fill layer here. Or maybe not. I just gonna go in my materials, and I'm gonna place this gold material. So now it's a PDD dragon, and I'm gonna hide all this beautiful gold with a black mask. Okay. And now I'm gonna select my paint, my brush. I'm gonna take this one, and I will draw crossing the UVs. So you can trust me, it's different UDIMs. You can see that here. The wings, for example, and the tails are different UDIMs. So as you can see, I can do that in the 2D view and in the 3D view, and it's working perfectly and really quick. And after I extract the 8K map, it's big resolution, so it's really sharp and really nice. So this is for the multi-UDIM process. And I will not spend too much time to talk to you about the multi-UDIM, because actually it's a great tool. But when you understand that, you just have to keep going and do whatever you want to do, what you were doing before. All the texturing process is going to work exactly the same. So for example, the particles that I'm going to show you later, everything going to work the same way. And it's just that you don't need to think about it. You just need to paint, and it's going to paint on multi-UDIMs. I'm going to start with something. I will talk to you now about the isolation of those UDIMs. So sometimes you want to isolate some stuff and paint some specific area, but sometimes you want to extrude directly one UDIM. And I was surprised. It's amazing, the new tool that they did here. It's UV tile mask, and you can select here. So there is different way to do it. So for example, I'm going to extrude my paint on this layer here. So I don't want that on 1002, 1003. So you understood that at the same time 1012 and 1013. But I can also right click here and extrude all the parts. And now I can click, and I'm going to reveal only this area. I can click again and hide all of those areas. And what I can do also is clicking directly on this area for the 2D view, and I'm going to reveal only this part. So as you can see, it's super powerful. It's I never saw that actually. In other software, you need to paint, fill properly the area, create a layer, etc. This is so quick and so powerful. So for example, really quickly, I create this fill layer. I'm going to use another technique. I will not put a material this time, okay? I'm just going to take a texture. I'm going to take this beautiful marble, and I will put that in the color map. I don't want that everywhere. I just want that on the horn. I click here. I click on my horns. I didn't do it in the correct way, so I'm going to exclude everything. And now I click on my horn. And as you can see, now it's only on the horns. To go away from this mode, you just click on the fill layer again, and you can see that I only fill my horn. I think you understood anyway. I'm going to jump on something else pretty quickly. So now I'm going to show you something I quite like. And this came from a research I did personally, because I noticed that on some software you had a lot of noise procedural with colors, and on Substance, as you can see, you have a camouflage here in French, camouflage, and some noise. All the other noise are black and white actually. So if I want to create a nice base color, I don't want to put a flat color, you know. I want to already start to have some variation. I'm gonna show you something pretty cool, which gonna add already a lot of realistic stuff on your project. For that, thank you, Marine, for the references, by the way. And I took this beautiful turtle. So you can see here that there is a base. So when you construct textures, it's exactly the same that when you construct, when you start to build a sculpt, you're going to start with the big shape, and after you're going to refine, and at the end you're going to finish by the wrinkles, etc. Here for the texture, I'm going to do the same. I'm going to start with a base, and this base is really interesting. So you see this brown, a bit bright and a bit dark, and here a bit more colorful with more saturation. Okay, let's do that. So if I want to do that, I'm going to start to think about a procedural, of course, and I'm going to start to think about something tileable. There is no reason to not use tileable for now. I press Alt and I'm going to isolate my color map, okay? And I'm going to take this beautiful spot and I'm going to bring it in the base color. I'm going to press on C and you're going to see only the diffuse. I already have first problem, which is the seams. So what are the seams? Of course, everybody knows that. I think it's where you cut the UVs. And we have a problem here because the noise is stopping at this extremity. We're going to switch that to triplanar production. I think you know, everybody knows that. And I'm going to reduce the scale, and now I have a lot of resolution and I have a really nice base. I'm going to uncheck this little thing, and I will think about the color I wanted to put. So if I want to do that, I'm going to right click and I'm going to add a filter, and I'm going to isolate my color, and I'm going to pick up my gradient here. And when I have this gradient, I can choose whatever color I want. And I'm going to do that in two steps. I'm going to take this green, I'm going to come here, and I'm going to pick up directly the green here. Like this, it's quicker. I'm going to go there, and I'm going to pick up this green. And it's now, just now, that I'm going to think about creating more complexity and being more precise and more subtle. I'm going to come here, and I'm going to put a bit more brown on this one. And I'm going to come here, and I'm going to put a bit more darkness on this one. And as you can see, I can have a really big control on that. And I can even have a better control if I add other filters here. So this is great because if you already watch like this with the shaders, you have an amazing base. And there is no excuse to start to create something quite realistic, even for cartoon renders, etc. So when I have this base, I can keep going and build all of those things. And I advise, of course, I'm going to talk about that a bit more after, but I advise, of course, to start with a fill and play with mask. But I'm going to talk about that just after. Now, I'm going to talk about something that pretty nice that I don't think people use a lot. I'm going to create this fill layer, and I will create a beautiful, colorful dragon like purple, like this, something a bit obvious. And I will add another fill layer here. And I'm gonna check for a color a bit different, but pretty flashy like this. And now I'm gonna show you something cool. And I thought about that when I was watching references. So as you can see on multiple animals, you have some natural gradient every time. I am not talking about this guy because he's a bit strange and he's completely black. I'm talking about this guy who have this beautiful gradient. So it's so fun that animals has a different color for the legs. And I really like doing that for Curvature. And what I want to do as a base, even if after I'm gonna add some complexity, is create a beautiful gradient with that. If you want to be quick and create something pretty natural and cool and do some tests, you can go here and add a generator. And in this generator, I'm gonna create a position one. And when I create this position one, I already have something beautiful. I'm done. See you guys. Now it's a really good base, and you can play with the color balance. You can put the limit between both really sharp, and you can choose where the blue gonna go on top of the purple, etc. And as you can see, it's pretty natural and pretty nice. You can also play with the orientation and the rotation of these things. I let you play with that anyway, but it's pretty cool. All right, I'm gonna jump on something else. And I'm gonna show you first a few references I was thinking about when I was talking about that. For example, you see this guy? He has this kind of really clean gradient stuff. So you don't need to be afraid about gradient because it's of course too clean, but after you can destroy it and you can add some layers on top. And by the way, I'm gonna show you directly something pretty cool. Some people think sometimes that when you add a fill here, after you need to create overlayers, etc. But I can already directly put a paint here and work a bit more on it. So I'm gonna pick up with P this color. And I can paint in this one with between black and white, and I can reveal a bit more of this thing. So I'm gonna go with a brush a bit more abstract with dots, and I'm gonna reveal a bit more of this beautiful purple under. And as we were saying, you can think that a gradient at the beginning is it's not natural and it's too much, but actually you can break it pretty quickly. And again, something I didn't talk about since the beginning, what I am talking about is non-destructive work. So I'm working with non-destructive techniques, which means that if you have a client or whatever person telling you that it's horrible what you did here, you can come back and you can switch with the white and you can paint with the blue. And you can come back like this. It's not like a layer where you need to erase and paint again. It's a mask who is driving the blue color. It's not me painting in blue, okay? So I am done for this one. And I thought it was a good illustration of this kind of guy with beautiful gradient. Now I'm gonna talk about something else. I can actually show you on the references what I want to do. So now I want to create those beautiful lines here. As you can see, it's everything, but not hand painted. When you want to paint with your hands, it's always less natural that the nature is doing. And when you want to do something realistic, the best thing is to spend time on referencing, real one, not watching 3D model renders or whatever, but watching real animals, reptiles, etc. And after you try to do the same. What I'm gonna show you now, it's a nice tip, I think, for to create this kind of chaos when you have something a bit clean at the beginning. I'm gonna create this line, which is completely not good and really human. I'm gonna destroy it a bit. I'm gonna press 2, which is the shortcut for the erase, by the way. I'm gonna press tab to show you the full dragon, and I'm gonna erase a bit on the side, okay? Now what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna create a filter in this guy, and I'm gonna come to press only color. By the way, I didn't talk about that, but when you do that, you just go quicker. It's less expensive. You just focus on one thing, and after it doesn't mean that you can't add 8 in the same thing, rough, etc. I'm gonna take this filter and I'm gonna take the warp mode. When I take the warp, when I put the warp mode, you're gonna see something beautiful is that he's already adding some natural things on my layers. So I'm pressing on C, and you see only the diffuse color, the albedo, if you prefer. And here, I'm gonna play with the wrap mode, and I'm gonna play with the contrast. I'm gonna isolate the color. And I can add some complexity on the border. And as you can see, I can change the scale of this kind of thing. And as you can see, it's already super natural. I'm gonna show you again the references. And when you have this kind of borders, I didn't need to spend so much time painting it by hand and creating all these different sharp things. I had this filter to create this beautiful thing. So this is another thing that I wanted to show you. I'm gonna jump now on something else. I'm gonna jump on the Photoshop brushes. So if I want to create a bit more complexity, I'm gonna just come here with a normal layer, which I didn't use a lot since the beginning, but I did on purpose because I really like using fill layer and play with the mask. It's a way to do non-destructive thing. And now you have amazing brushes for Photoshop. I will not spend too much time on it. I'm gonna isolate the color one. I'm gonna pick up my color. And now I'm gonna paint on it. Sorry. I'm gonna do that with a fill layer actually. So I always start with a really flashy color. I don't mind, and after I add, and after I'm gonna show you a bit better like this. This kind of Photoshop brush, we're gonna create a lot of. I really like one specifically. So as I told you, I am not doing a tutorial, so I will not spend too much time on it. But the main conclusion is that the new brushes from Photoshop are great. I am not even painting with the Wacom tablet for now. So I just let you go here and check what is new, and it's amazing. You have a lot of dynamic new stuff. You have a lot of things which are going to create a lot of realistic result. Now I'm going to jump on something else. So as you can see, what I really like is creating my texture myself. And Substance at the beginning was famous because he has also this amazing smart mask. I'm going to do something a bit less boring. I'm going to take a smart material now, or just a material. Sorry. I'm going to take this this one. And I'm going to create some, I can create by a generator myself, right click, but I can also click and drag this smart mask. I will not spend too much time on it because I think it's the thing that you know the most from Substance, and I think it's great, but I want to spend more time showing you other things. So I don't know why this one is not working. I actually have a little problem here. I don't know why. It shouldn't, because so I take this material, gold, and I take my smart mask and I click and drag on the material. He's calculating actually. And now he's creating some areas based, of course, I don't talk much about this, but on all the maps you baked. I wanted to insist on something for this dragon. The really specific thing of this dragon is that I didn't bake my sculpt. I created myself some displacement, which is the details you're gonna push in your render, which gonna push the scales, etc. And that you can see in the normal map here. So I converted my displacement in my normal map. So you can see some maps that I baked from Substance, ambient occlusion, thickness, etc. But just let you know that it's not an obligation. You can spend a lot of time creating your own maps. And I just open it in Photoshop for you. So here you have, it's a bit boring to see that like this, but you can see how clean is it. And why I did that, because since weeks people ask me why the scales are so clean, etc. is because I created this myself. I can even show you one of the scale I created myself. She's here. She's alone, like this, created in Photoshop. And I'm gonna create packs of those scales. I'm gonna try to orient them. And in Photoshop, you can see the displacement here that I put in the input of Substance. And here you have all of the directional areas. You can see that it's really clean. And it's what's going to create these beautiful renders at the end. Because ZBrush, you're going to lose a bit of details, etc. So I decided to do that. So when you have all those maps that you baked or that you created, Substance is going to take that and going to create some areas based on those things. What I wanted to show you is that even if you have a mask after, I'm going to create something a bit more simple with that gold. And I'm just going to put some red. So if you start like this, and that you paint your reds area, it doesn't mean that it's done and that you're going to jump on another layer. It's not a big deal to start with a fill layer. You can still go there, add your paint here. Sorry, this is the mask. So I don't want to edit the mask. I want to edit the fill. And the fill you can add on top of that the paint is what I wanted to show you. And here I'm going to take these brushes with a lot of variations. And I'm going to go there. I'm going to select my color if I find it. I think I am missing something here. I'm missing something here. Sorry.
You use the eraser. Jump to the paint tool.
All right, it's just a tool. So I was on the erasers in the beginning. Oh, thanks so much, Christophe. He saved me. All right, so here you have the color, and you take the green color, and you can paint inside and create some variation. And it's not because you use the fill color that you, so can you imagine how much complexity you can put just if you add more paint layer here? You can put another one and another one and another one. So usually people put a fill layer and try to update the mask, etc. But you can add a paint here, and you can add a blur now. So the blur gonna affect only the green, of course. The green is the paint I added on top, and I'm gonna add some blur. And you can see that I blur this beautiful green with this. So yeah, I think this was interesting also. Now I'm gonna show you something that you can have a deck at the beginning with that. I'm gonna show you that in a really simple way, anchor point. I'm gonna create anchor point, but in a different way. And something really great with anchor point that people forget is that you can use that with that, the visibility of the thing. So what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna paint in with my 8 now, and I'm gonna create some pimps. So it's not a baby dragon, it's a teenager dragon, and you're gonna have some pimples. I'm gonna paint that here. I'm gonna hit my black mask, and now I'm gonna go with my 8. Sorry. I'm gonna put some 8 here, and I'm gonna paint in black and white. And you can see that I'm painting some details now and not color anymore, okay? I'm gonna take something pretty soft, and I'm gonna create some veins here or some pimp like this, okay? Some veins here. Again, I don't talk about multi-UDIMs anymore because you can see that it doesn't matter. You just work every time. And now what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna create another fill layer. And to explain that well, it doesn't matter if this thing is in between a lot of layers, okay? And I'm gonna check this color. I'm gonna put a black mask. And in the grayscale, so I up anchor point. I think, Christophe, I will need you again. All right, I know what I did. I'm gonna put my fill layer here. I'm gonna create a fill layer again, and I'm gonna put an anchor point here. Now I have access to the anchor point. Whoop. No, actually, I maybe need you, Christophe, because I forgot this thing.
Hey, Damien, I think that maybe, I think you need to add the anchor point first to the vein that you painted.
Oh, you're right. Just forgot this tape. So
no problem, man. It's easy. I do it all the time.
So if I add this anchor point here, I'm gonna say the name of this anchor point. I'm gonna say that it's veins. And now I can come back here, and I'm gonna find my fill layer. And here I'm gonna have my anchor point veins. And now I'm gonna fill it in red. So I actually missed something. Okay. So I have this thing, and I'm gonna create this fill layer. I'm gonna put some red color here, and I'm gonna create a black mask with a fill mask. And now I'm gonna create an anchor point, veins, but here I don't keep base color. I'm gonna take 8. And here I'm gonna create my anchor point here. Sorry for that, guys. All right, I think I'm doing a completely wrong thing. So I'm sorry for that, and I'm gonna jump on something else, and I'm gonna try to show you that after. I'm gonna show you something for the dry stuff that you can have on the nails, on Curvature, for example. And again, it's a way to add a lot of realistic stuff. So for example, you can start with a fill layer, completely white. Again, I'm gonna focus on the color white to see it properly, and after I'm gonna add some complexity. And now I'm gonna create this black mask, and in this black mask, I'm gonna put my procedural. And here, I really like something marble, so I can put that here. And I'm gonna check that and put this marble. I think, guys, we're gonna have a problem because I think it's my computer. No, it's fine. I'm gonna use the triplanar projection again to make it tileable. And I will have this really nice marble things. I don't want that actually, I want the invert thing. So if you want the invert, you can go here and you're gonna have these nice things. I don't want so much, so I'm gonna have a level on top of that. And I'm gonna have all these little details on top of everything. And I can use these features, right click, exclude all tiles, and I'm gonna click on my ones. And now I have these nice things on top. But now I'm gonna come back here. I'm gonna add some bump. I'm gonna put a noise in the 8. And I'm gonna have add some roughness. And I can put that really rough. And by this way, if I start to spend more time, like maybe 5 minutes more, I can put a color map in there, which is gonna create some contrast, etc. I can come back on my mask, play on my level, come back on my marble, play with the scale, etc. So it's a good way to add some details on new nails, etc. It adds a lot of realistic aspect. All right, I'm gonna jump on something else. Veins on the wings. So for the veins on the wings, it's exactly the same techniques that what I did on the arms. But I can show you also a way to the multi-UDIMs with the particles. So if I put this beautiful red again, I'm gonna hide that. And now if I want to paint on it, I can take my particles here. And I can start to create some big veins. And as you can see, it's not a problem at all for him, for Substance, to create the veins everywhere with the multi-UDIMs. And again, I insist, it's the full thing. You can recreate a paint on top of that. You can take a brush and you can hide some area or press X and switch. And you can change what you did, come back on particles, take this one now, like breaking windows, and you can create that. So this was for the veins, and I just wanted to add something for that. My wings and my body, they don't even have the same resolution, the same ratio for the UVs, and it doesn't matter. Substance is not taking care about that. It's super quick, and it put everything at the same size, and all the lines go from one to another. If I create this layer, so this is something I didn't know. I spent a lot of time to find to try to find that. I'm gonna come back on this brush, and I'm gonna paint here. And as you can see, and this is really powerful. It's something that not a lot of software. I think it's exclusivity from Substance. Since long time, I love it. When you paint on the neck, it's going through, and it's going on the other side. So this is great. It's amazing. But sometimes you don't want this thing. And I spent a lot of time to find that. And if you want to find that, it's just here, alignment. So as you can see, I'm painting here and it's going there, okay? Which is great. But sometimes if I don't want it, you go in alignment and you put UV. And here it's blocked and you can't paint on the other side. So this is a cool thing. Now I'm going to show you quickly all the layers I created for my dragon. And you're going to understand that all the things I show you, there is nothing more complicated than what I did. So I'm going to come back in F3. And you can see the full final dragon, by the way. So really sharp scales, some variations. Here you can see a bit of roughness and bump, you see. It's pretty natural, pretty interesting. You can find some really sharp cavities, but at the same time, some gradient inside the scales. You can even see that there is some subsurface scattering in the mouth. So this is great. I'm going to talk to you about that just after. The horns with a nice base with smart mask to create these borders. And this is all the layers I used. So I'm going to slowly uncheck everything. And let me the time and time to Substance to update that. It's pretty quick, actually, as you can see. Even if you manage a lot of UDIMs, etc. I was talking about the subsurface scattering. It's absolutely amazing because you don't need to spend time like to do another step after you texturing and just create the subsurface map on the side, etc. You can create the subsurface at the same time that you are painting, and it's great. So this is a base that I baked at the beginning, and I imported all the maps at the end. By the way, Substance is great for that because you can update the maps 4K to 8K, and that's why it's really useful to not bake everything, but just to keep everything like it is. Me, when I want and when I am happy with the base I have, I just bake everything. I export the textures, and after I just added overlayers. This is a really simple layer to paint on top. I just have fun. I don't want to be too much, I don't want to use too much tools, etc. I just spend time to try things that I love. It's just painting with the new Photoshop brushes, nothing more. After, I'm going to talk to you about this curvature pass. So I'm going to show you the diffuse color. And this is pretty important, actually. So this is this really specific map I added in my baking map with the displacement, which gonna drive all my my curvature path. So here you can see the fill. There is a displacement in the fill. So I'm gonna go there in my textures. I'm gonna take my displacement map, project, displacement map. You can see here is the one I show you in Photoshop. Okay, I'm gonna bring it here in my fill layer, and after I'm gonna play with the level. Look what the level is doing. If I play with the level, you're going to see something beautiful. I'm playing with the displacement control. And now inside, I'm gonna fill it with a color. But on top of that, if I want to add a paint color again, I can add a lot of complexity. And it's really interesting like this. All right. I jump on this other folder. To add a bit more details, a bit more colors. And I'm gonna start already to play with the subsurface scattering. I will not go through everything. The realistic breakup is the thing I show you for the horns, maybe some level colors or displacement, etc. The SSS is here. And I just want to say something about the SSS. So what is interesting that you can have some texture list is here, texture set list, okay? If you want to find this thing, you go there, window, views, and you can find everything, texture set list, okay? And here I have my body, and my body is really specific. My body, I want to merge everything. As you can see, if I hide cornea and eyes, I have everything in one block. So I'm not the kind of guy who like to do a lot of texture list. I don't need it. I just need to have one big for the one I know I'm going to use subsurface scattering. So subsurface scattering is the light going through. When you put your hand in front of the sun, you're going to see some red area. It's this kind of thing. You have a lot in the mouth. You have a lot for the fingers, etc. When you watch someone the ears, it's a subsurface scattering. This red thing. When I have this body, The only thing I want is to have the shader, which allow me to have a subsurface scattering. And I use the PBR metal rough. And because I use this guy, I can add a layer, a fill layer, and I can play with the squatter. You see here? You see how it creates this delicate borders? And I want to use that, and I want to paint in this thing. And if I use a white one, for example, I'm going to have SSS absolutely everywhere. The value I put here, okay? But here, if I paint in black, if I paint with a normal brush and not particles, I'm gonna cut this subsurface. And it's exactly what I did for the dragon, actually. I did it for the mouth a lot, and after I paint in black here, and you have less subsurface scattering. It's a good way to add some realistic stuff on your creature also. Why I was talking about that? Because there is an amazing thing here. The cornea and the eyes, they are on another texture set list. And why they are on another texture set list is because this cornea, she has another shader, PBR metal rough with alpha blending. When I have this one, I can play also with the opacity. I don't play with the SSS this time, I play with the opacity. When I have this guy, I can say that the opacity is like this everywhere. I can hide that. And now I'm gonna paint in black in this area. And I'm gonna reveal the cornea. So can you imagine how powerful is it? You can play with your creature, having a lot of resolution with the multi-UDIMs. You can play with the subsurface scattering, which is gonna create some realistic aspect. You can play with the transparency. You can play with everything. So you just need to switch from shader. And if you want to update the shader, if you want to bring a guy on the back of the dragon, you can just update your project here, project configuration, and you're going to select another model. And after, don't worry, at some point, I didn't know how to do that at some point, but don't worry, you can add any object you want. And after you can reattribute all the texture list and all the shaders you want on the guys. I'm going to finish by something because I'm pretty long already, I think. I'm gonna talk about the filter through. So I didn't know that. Also, I think it's amazing. When I did this, so as you can see, there is not a lot of layer because I was not on the good one. I come back on body, okay, and I'm gonna uncheck all. Now I'm gonna recreate this line that I did. All right. So now it's green. I'm gonna create this line. And I forgot to show you that before, but when I was doing the warp filter, what I really want to do is just changing the color of this one. I press color only, and I'm gonna go here and press this filter, HSL. And I'm gonna change the hue, saturation, lightness. So this is the way to change only the color of your layer, okay? But if I want to change, which is all small things, but really interesting, if I take this guy and I bring it here, automatically, when you bring a filter from this library and you put here, it's gonna come automatically with the through mode, which is great. When you do that, you can change the saturation of the full thing. As you can see, it didn't change the color only of this one, it changed the color of the full layers under, okay? And I'm showing you that because, again, we can do some amazing thing like this. We can put a black mask. And if we want to add some complexity, we can just come here with a brush. And we're going to add some saturation here, just this area, really gently. I'm going to come back here. And I'm going to change that. And just this area, I'm going to change color. And it's super powerful. Why it's powerful? Because remember, when I created this gradient color, at the really beginning, I put a noise and I put this gradient. I have already a lot of complexity. Now I can just add a pass-through filter on top of that. And I can just add some darkness, etc. For example, some lightness here. And just with a filter through that I take and I grab like this, it's going to come automatically with through, and just with that, I'm going to change few areas and add some subtleties to the colors, etc. So I think this is really powerful, and it's really great that Painter has all these things, these little things. You know, for example, when you create from here, the filter going to be normal, but when you click and you drag, it's going to be a filter with the mode through. Anyway, thanks so much, guys. Sorry, I forgot some stuff for the encore point because I had some problems with my notes, etc. But thanks a lot. I think I'm done, guys.
Damien, thank you so much, man. That was really incredible. I love this dragon asset. I was able to work on that on the demo team, myself and Casimir from the team. And it was actually really fun to be able to work with your asset to help produce some demos we were doing. So again, man, excellent, excellent work.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so it looks like you've already stopped sharing your screen, so perfect. I think now, guys, what we're going to do is just jump over into some Q&A. We had Maureen and Vincent were in the chat. They were grabbing a few questions here. And so let's just jump right into it. Let's see. We kind of have this broken off into a few categories. Let's start with some questions from the Painter team first. And so this might have already been answered. Let's see here. Performance updates planned for 2020 versions or later in the 2021 version. Maybe Valeria, you had mentioned, I think, some performance. Is that stuff that's happening right now, 2020, or is that 2021?
The ones that I did mention are already in Painter right now, but there are other ones that we're working on. I don't know if Chris wants to add specifically what we're working on, but maybe that's not allowed.
Well, we cannot make any promise, but in fact, every version of Substance Painter has a set of optimization. Because of the size of the project, because of the scope of the project, we had to improve the paint engine at each version. Sometimes people notice that. Sometimes it's a bit slight, but yeah, we don't ship features that we forget just after. We continuously try to speed up the compilation, because since all is dynamic and all is computed on the fly in Substance Painter, we have to take care about, my main concern is performance in Substance Painter. All have to be real time, and yeah. It's I have a lot of work for many years.
Enough to keep you busy, right? Yeah. Okay, so yeah, so this other question here is, I've seen this was a couple times. It's mainly asking about like UVs going across the tiles. So they're saying that they noticed that to create a UV island per tile, and something like if they were doing a floor where they have a single geo going across tiles. So basically, the workflow that you guys implemented, you cannot have a UV shell that crosses the tiles. Is that correct?
Yes, that's the state of things right now. I don't know if that's something that we would like to work on, or if it's even possible.
Yeah, the problem is that we don't modify the geometry, because if we split the triangles that go across several UV tiles, we made assumptions and we create seams that the final renderer will not be aware of. That's why we, as the first version, we don't split automatically triangles, and we just kick off. We refuse the mesh that have triangles that comes across UV types. Maybe in a future release, but I think it's not a priority. I don't. It can be done very easily in your DCC software. You can just have triangles that are snapped on the UV tile borders. It works.
Thank you. So another question here is talking about, they say they caught the tiles workflow as a departure from the Substance game development origins. And so they're asking, are UV tiles, are they useful for game developers who work with large scale assets?
Well, I would say generally it could be, but it depends on what you're doing with that. Like, for example, you probably know that recently Unreal actually allowed UDIMs, well, UV tiles, in its engine, but before that wasn't the case. So, you know, if it doesn't work with one software, but it works in another, it might not have been as useful. But right now, I would say that it could be. And there are advantages to that. Like there was a question, I think, that was a bit similar in the chat. The ones that I do see are that if you're using UV tiles as opposed to, for example, different meshes or splitting your mesh into separate things, you're still doing just one draw call. So that's ultimately, I think, is less expensive. I mean, a developer could probably confirm. Another reason is that with UV tiles, as Damien has mentioned, per UV tile, you can have a different resolution. So I think that could be quite interesting because it depends on what your asset is, but you can define that this facet, for example, if you're building that you're going to see up close is going to be in 4K, but everything behind is going to be in 1K or even 512. And you don't really actually need to split the mesh, whether it is into different geo or different materials, in order to be able to achieve that. And now, since everything is kind of evolving and the power of engines, etc., is evolving, I think UV tiles kind of eliminates the need for 8K textures or even 16K textures for very, very high-end assets. Since you can really prioritize and say, okay, I'm just gonna need this UV tile to be high res, or and not all of them at the same time. So I don't know if Chris, you want to add a bit more to that as to the usefulness of UV tiles in games?
Yeah, for game, we are very dependent to the renderer, the final renderer used. The renderer is in Substance Painter at the origin. The goal was to fit with renderer needs. If the renderers support UV tiles, of course, the UV tile workflow is very interesting in this case. Nothing more.
Great, thanks, guys. So another one, you guys, Valeria, you had mentioned about feedback, and this one was, what feedback are you guys most looking for? Is it, is it bug reports, or is it improvements, features requests, or is it just anything?
I would say pretty much anything, because if there is like a bug out there that people keep on getting and we don't know about it, for whatever reason, there's probably chances that we want to take a look at that. Because depending on how large scale it is, it might be a symptom of a bigger problem, or it might be a minor problem, but that kind of spoils the life of users in general. So I think it's, if it's a typo, I mean, I think everybody could live with that. But if it's something a bit more significant, especially if it kind of blocks your workflow, I think those are the most interesting and important ones. Because, as I say, we can use them to either develop things better or just see if there's something wrong, more essentially. And as for the feedback in terms of features, that's also quite useful, because it means like if there's a lot of people asking for the same thing, it means there is a need. It means that it's not done elsewhere, for example. So we can really use that to move forward.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm laughing here at Vincent's comments. He says we just accept positive feedback and compliments. All right, that's awesome. Sorry. So yeah, one other question for you guys here: is it possible to bake an individual ID mask for each mesh while using multiple UVs?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yes. Yeah, sure thing. Sorry, guys. So is it possible to bake an individual ID map, and that is mask, basically just talking about the ID map, for each mesh while using multiple UVs? I think so, right? I mean, yeah, because you have your UV project, you're baking from all of them.
Yes. Sorry, yeah. Go ahead, Valeria.
No, go ahead, Alex. You started.
I just wanted to say, when you are baking a UV tile project mesh, you are getting an ID map for each UV tile. So I guess it answers the question, right?
I think so.
Yeah. Just for those of you who might not have noticed, it would have been hard, but just in case, for the baking window specifically, we've added a new tab, which is the selection tab. It's something that we didn't have before. But right now, you can basically go into the selection tab and select any UV tile, or if you don't have UV tiles texture set and bake that individually, and then select an individual map and bake that for that specific UV tile.
Okay, great. Thank you, guys. Okay, so before we move right over to Damien, I just want to take a moment because we have about 15 minutes left. I just want to take a moment to ask you guys, probably mainly, well, I guess all three of you guys, like, is there like just some kind of development story you can tell us? Just something that just crazy happened that's just kind of funny, something, I don't know, maybe was there just some moment that you guys could share that might be just to show how fun it is to work with the Substance team? Because it is fun, right? Yeah, I mean, like we all have a great time.
Yeah.
Well, now it isn't. I mean, we're all at home.
Yeah, that is true, man. I miss you guys. Yeah.
We have a great team working on Substance Painter. So yeah, we are really close to each other, and it's really fun to work together. One thing that comes to mind, it was, I don't think it was the last release, but maybe the March release. We are working crazy to get all the optimization we wanted to do for the exporter. Chris did a huge job to profile every part of the software, to improve every inch of the software to get a really fast export, which was necessary for a big project like UV tiles, because when you have hundreds of tiles to export, you want it to be done in a reasonable amount of time. And yeah, we were like trying to optimize every inch of the software, and we were getting really good performances. And at some point we were like, so everything was really laggy, and we tried to find what was going on, and it was just some silly code. I think we were just a bit tired because of all the amount of work we've been working on. And sometimes, yeah, you try to find in every inch of the software what you can improve, and sometimes just you made just a big mistake somewhere, and you fix this mistake and you improve the performances like by 10x. So yeah, sometimes you just laugh at yourself and you say, yeah, that was a big mistake, should have been cut earlier. But in the end, it turns out that we get something that works pretty fast. So
to be more precise, and I assume that instead of rendering, exporting the UV tiles once, to do one export per UV tiles, we export each UV tile n times, several times, lots of time.
yes.
And the rendering times was just horrible. But since it was only for the UV tile workflow, and the UV tile workflow was not yet released, it was okay.
Yeah, it was never released to the users.
Our beta tester was a bit surprised, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so Alex, it looks like your video is frozen, but no big deal, man. We can still hear you. So that's just what's going on there. Okay, so one other thing here. Let me just take a look. Before I want to get over to Damien, but just real quick, Christophe, did you want to mention anything about the merge of layers? I think there was a note about that.
Merge of layers. I think it was the request number one after the 3D mouse, I think. But yeah,
yeah. Just below 3D mouse, yeah.
Okay. I think that's maybe it's not very clear for everyone, but the idea of Substance Painter was to obtain a non-destructive workflow from the start to the end. The idea is that every action in Substance Painter is stored as a procedural action. We never store raster except for the bakes, and except for the cache, the texture cache, the final results. Okay, and these textures are stored in the project, and that's why the projects are quite big. Okay, on large projects, and we try to, on the last release, we optimized the bakes, and in the future release we try to skip some bakes and remove some redundancies, some dependencies, and we have to work on also on the texture cache. And I try to explain that we never store raster. Okay, and we compute all the stuff on the fly each time you load, each time the cache points are lost. And that's why we the merge layer can be only a UX feature. It can be only a kind of okay. I have a folder. I don't want to see the content of the folder, but merging layers, merging layer into raster is quite dangerous because you lost all your history, and you would not be able to recompute all the texture when resolution change occurs, when you change your mesh, and of course you are not be able to edit your fill layers and so on. Yeah. To avoid the needs of merging layers is the only answer is optimization. We have to optimize more and more the paint engine to avoid the need of merging layers. And of course, there is a lot of we have a lot of hints, and we have a lot of there is a plenty of room for optimization, and maybe the merge layers will be not asked anymore because of this optimization. I hope that.
Awesome. Thanks, Christophe, for your insight into that. Okay, guys. So yeah, so just starting to get a little low on time. So I want to switch over to Damien. So Damien, a few questions for you. I'm just going to jump right into the big one, man.
Yeah.
So this one is about the displacement map you created in Photoshop, which honestly completely blew my mind as well. It looks like several people. Basically, they're just asking about your process. How'd you do that? Could you make a tutorial for that, which would be amazing? But basically, could you just talk about that a little bit more? So you individually composited that displacement map in Photoshop, like scale by scale. Is that what you did?
Yeah, and it took me 5 years. No, I'm joking.
I was gonna, yeah, probably.
Yeah, I mean, if I was doing it, maybe not 5 years, but not far. Yeah, no, of course I'm not doing it, but you know what is important is that at the same time you're going to find the workflow, at the same time you're going to find the motivation. Means that if you start with one scale, but that you already know that you didn't have the best result before sculpting it properly, etc. You want to try something else, and I'm going to be more precise for that, because lots of people have the same problems, and years after years the same questions come back. But when you extract some displacement from ZBrush, you extract some sculpt. The sculpt is based on the polygons. And why we can do amazing things in ZBrush and lots of details is because you can put a lot of polygons, but the details still come from the sculpt. You have some methods. You can use some HD methods, etc. It's not what I use, and I am not saying it's bad. I'm just saying that from texture you can have a lot of flexibility and you can have a lot of quality. So if you take some marble maps, if you take some scales maps, or if you create yourself the gray maps, you're gonna have a lot more details in your texture at the end to do some renders than extracting from the sculpt. If you sculpt a lot of scales but you change your mind also, you're gonna have to flat all the scales, etc. So it can be a problem. So what I did is that I started to think about the scales from this direction and say, anyway, I want to use my scales from 2D, from the UVs, and I'm gonna have the full resolution of that, and not from the sculpt. So if you have a look to the GIF that Substance and myself released, when you see the dragon, the gray dragon, and after you see the scales, etc. At the really beginning of this GIF, you can see that the dragon doesn't have the scale in the sculpt. So I create all the volumes, etc. And after the scales are separated in a map that we call displacement. Displacement gonna be all the details which gonna have a little bit of thickness, but not too much. And after all, let's say all the scratch and all the dots on top of that, you can add that in the bump. And the bump, I showed you how to create that just before in a Painter. When you create the displacement map, you can do some tests and you can export this displacement map. You can convert this displacement map in normal map also if you want, and you can plug that in the Substance channel, more than baking. And after you can see if your scale looks good. And after you can create scales, pack of scales. You can use the puppet, for example, on Photoshop. You can use some projection method. You can use a lot of tools actually. And to finish about that, you are right. I should create a tutorial about that to show the full process, but there is a lot of different version, different aspect. But yeah, sometimes things take time. And no, I didn't put one scale one by one. After you can create a group of scale, you can reduce the scale. But what is really important for creature is when the scales follow the flow of the creature. So you need to follow the feature of the muscle, the feature of the bones, etc. And you're gonna have enough scale and realistic scales on an animal. But if you start to apply that in a sculpt without thinking about it before, you're gonna have a less good result. So it's the thing I choose. I did that like this because I really wanted these sharp, clean scales. I hope I answered to the question.
Excuse me,
yeah.
Damien. I have a question about that. Why do you don't use Substance Painter for this operation?
So this is a really good question, and I already started to talk with you guys and some technical guys, friends of you, working at Substance, and I'm waiting a bit over tools. I'm waiting for warping tools and things like this. So I think, by the way, Valeria was talking a bit about that before, and I would like to have a way to project my scales and after have another editing step after to control the flow of my scales, etc. But again, it's really important to keep in mind that when you're gonna find the thing you love, the scales you love, after you're gonna find the motivation, and you're gonna start to add more scales, and after you're gonna feel this area, and after you can use many tools. For example, I talked about the puppet in Photoshop. You can take a group of scales. You can use the puppet tool, marionette in French, and you can move all the scales at the same time. And when it's going to be super beautiful, it's when, for example, you see the cheek of a dragon, you're going to have bigger scales. And when you're going to slowly, with a gradient, have smaller scales around the eyes, it's going to be super beautiful. And you can do that by this way. And I hope with a future projection tool in Substance Painter.
It's cool. I wonder, Christophe, if we could, if you had made a Substance Painter filter that's, using the tile sampler from Designer, maybe you could paint the flow map info as an input to that filter and help the scales kind of flow around something. I wonder if that would be possible.
I think it's possible if your UV unwrap is clean. Because the problem of using this kind of filters directly into the stack of Painter is that we are very sensitive to the UV unwrap. But of course, it's possible. It's fun because Damien uses a lot of tips that Substance designer guys use, in fact.
I didn't know that.
There is a lot of correspondence between Substance designer approach and your approach.
Okay, I definitely need to jump on this one then.
Yeah. So Damien, another question here. This is more of just the painter workflow, but they're asking your imported texture maps. How did you get those to be stacked as UDIMs? So they were saying the only way they know how to do that is through baking. But if you import in a UDIM sequence, it just works, right?
Exactly. I think I'm going to let the technical guys talking about that, but I don't know if you saw that properly, but when you have a texture in Substance Painter, I'm going to share my screen really quickly, if you don't mind. So it's an interesting question. Tell me if I understood well, because I'm not sure. I just wanted to show you that. You see my my texture, my import texture here, the displacement. I just needed three of that. So I'm gonna go there, and I'm gonna go there, and I'm gonna show you what looks like the displacement. It's here, and now I'm gonna show you on the full model. You see, all the details come from this really clean gray map. And when I wanted to import that, what we didn't talk about, and I don't know if you saw this, is indeed the maps, when you name it correctly, properly, it's going to come with this number, and you see that you understand that you have three maps following. It's pretty simple. it's pretty simple. You just need to do that. So you're going to import a displacement. I'm going to call that disp. You do absolutely what you want for that, okay? You call it a color map, bump. You call it a baby dragon. And after, underscore 1001. And after the second map, you just use the same naming convention and you put 1002, 1003, 1004. And by this way, Substance gonna recognize the thing and gonna put this number on it. And when you're gonna click and drag, you're gonna keep the following maps.
That's correct.
Yeah, awesome.
That's correct, yes.
You just apply it to the fill layer and Substance Painter knows how to associate those three maps with the tiles.
And it's
Absolutely.
really useful. And if I am right, there is two ways to name these things. And you can have a look, as Valeria was saying, there is a great documentation for that. And also, by the way, guys, don't forget that Substance did great video based on the baby dragon, where you can find little tutorials about the basics. And there is all this explanation in there.
Okay, so Damien, let me hit you up with one more question before we close out, because we're running just a little bit over time. So this one was, how did actually pose the dragon? Did you pose the baby dragon in the render pose, not to distort the UVs in the process? So did you like do the pose, then UVs, or UVs and then pose?
So this is really interesting. By the way, what you say is interesting also at the beginning, because you say distort the dragon because it's not in pose. But remember that when a dragon gonna move in a movie or whatever, anyway the UV is gonna be distorted. Okay. So what is really important is that the UVs are clean in the bind pose at the beginning, but after it's gonna be distorted because the muscle gonna move, etc. And we're gonna help this thing after in VFX in movies. With shot sculpt sometime, but the most important thing is that the UVs are clean, relaxed when the model is in bind pose. By the way, the bind pose, it's not every time this thing, okay? It's not every time the dragon in this pose, because sometimes it's not what we need, you know. If in the movie the baby dragon is never flying, and you always have the wings like this. You don't need to do that and to relax the UVs like this. It's better to have the UVs relaxed like this. So my answer could be, the best thing is to create a bind pose which gonna match with the position of the character in the movie. And after, from this bind pose, it's here that you need to spend time first to relax the UVs. Second, find the good seams where you're gonna cut. It's cool sometimes if you can cut behind the ear. It's better than just cut in the middle of the cheek, you know. Of course, now with Substance, I show you with the triplanar. It's so great that you don't really need to take to think about seams, and think about the guys. I don't know. I'm not good with years, but maybe 10 years ago or 6 years ago, they should take care a lot with the seams. Now we can, with these softwares, it's amazing. You can ignore a bit that. But yeah, spend time to relax your UVs, spend time to find where are the seams. And after you can create your texturing with the symmetrical bind pose. And after you're gonna put in pose, or at the same time. And at this moment, you're gonna distort a bit the UVs, but it's completely normal because in a movie, it's the same.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Damien. So
No
guys,
worries.
I think that's going to close things out. So let's start doing our wrap up here. So we're running just a bit over time. Okay, so what we're going to do here is I just really want to thank everyone for joining us today. This was a great show. It was awesome to hang out with the Painter team. And I really miss you guys, man. We've all just seen each other online. So I can't wait till we can all hang out again. And also, Damien, it was awesome to have you here as well, man. I love the artwork that you did. It's so cool to get the insight into your expertise and your workflows, man. So thank you so much, Damien. Also, love the way you present. Yeah, I love Thank you. Yeah, the beautiful colors and stuff, man. It was great, dude. You did a great job. Thank you so much. So if anyone else have any closing thoughts or anything they want to leave anybody with, just leave it up to you guys.
Thanks a lot. Okay. Thanks a lot for the comments.
Yeah.
Thanks to the team, and thanks again to Benjamin Maréchal.
Yeah,
for
yeah,
the
Ben.
version and the dragon work.
Awesome.
Yes.
Okay,
And I
well,
would say
that's...
thank
Oh,
you,
go ahead, Alex.
Damien.
Sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Damien, for your presentation. It was really
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
yeah, it
Thanks
was
to
really
you.
interesting to see how you worked on
And
this
a really
asset.
quickly anecdote, by the way, it's amazing, guys. I will not talk about the full story, but I was going to the doctor with my mother in Clermont-Ferrand, which is a really small city in France, in the middle of the France, okay? And I was going to my doctor, and I saw that there was a floor with Substance, and I didn't know that. And my mother said, let's go say hello. And it's the first time I met the guys from Substance. So it was completely random and really funny. And every time I worked with you, it was a pleasure and really nice, really cool to work with you. I had the freedom to do this, my personal design, etc. It's a pleasure. Every time I have an update with VFX guys who want to improve it, I had the opportunity to talk with my friends from Framestore and MPC, and I can talk about that with you. So it's great that we have multi-UDIMs now, and I think in the future it's going to be even better, and you're always open to new stuff. So we're going to keep doing that and push the limits to have something even better and amazing. But it's a huge step, and thanks a lot for this collaboration.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Damien Van. Very cool story. All right. Thanks again, everyone. Take care. Be safe. And we will see you on the next stream. Happy birthday, Vincent. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.